Close enough. So I'd like to convene and call to order our joint meeting of the Cotati City Council and the successor agency to the former Cotati Community Redevelopment Agency. And if we could have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Harvey. Here. Councilmember Landman.
Here.
Councilmember Moore.
Present.
Vice Mayor Skillman. Here. Mayor DeLasso.
Here.
All are present.
Thank you very much. And if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And thank you very much for that. We are now at item 1 of our agenda, which is approval of minutes from the September 9, 2014 regular meeting and notice of waiving of reading of all resolutions and ordinances introduced and or adopted under this agenda.
Move to approve. I'd second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion from council? Nope. Seeing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Please show that's a 5-0 vote in favor. And we'll now move on to housekeeping items.
For the benefit of everyone in attendance, we ask that you please observe the following. Silence electronic devices, including cell phones. Audience members are advised that the chamber and hallways carry sound, so please keep conversations to a minimum or conduct them outside the building. Photographs or video recordings using tripods or other means that would be distracting are to be taken only from the designated media area along the west wall of the chamber. Members of the public wishing to address the council are asked to complete a separate speaker card for each item. Speaker cards are located on the table just inside the entrance to the chamber. Place the completed speaker cards in the designated tray located by the Deputy City Clerk, and when their name is called, speakers should come forward to the podium and direct their comments to the City Council.
All right, thank you very much. These are just our basic housekeeping items, which is just general protocol that you'll find at most public meetings. Is there any public comment, Mr. Barrich?
Good evening, Council. I'm former Cotati City Council member George Barrich, and I do appreciate the chairman here giving at least some explanation about what these housekeeping items are, because that's sure a whole lot more than we've gotten over the last year and a half. I would like to speak on these housekeeping items. They were once referred to here in print as housekeeping rules. They've changed a number of different times and been added to and subtracted. And my concern has been over the last year and a half is that nobody seems to be forthcoming on where these housekeeping rules items came from. We have no policy in place. Apparently they were never voted on. These items were never vetted before the public. You never asked for any input. I've been coming here 16 years, and they seem to have come out of nowhere or out of the back room, out of the city manager's office. And I think it's high time that the City Council do things like other cities do, as that's the proper way, which is actually put together these policies, vote on them like representatives of a city, and then put them into your policy manual. But evidently, I think after a year and a half, I've been more than patient. I think it's fair to say there's some type of cover-up going on here. I don't know what your agenda is to try to kind of mold these housekeeping items together, a couple of them which actually violate the Brown Act. But I think sooner or later, maybe someone will break their silence. I mean, Councilmember Moore broke his silence one night and said they're courtesies. So he actually interprets them as courtesies. I thought that was somewhat humorous. But I would like to make a recommendation on maybe one housekeeping rule that you could come up with in the event that you ever want to vote on these is maybe the council members should stop telling citizens the information that they're looking for is buried somewhere in the staff report. Because that's sometimes what we get here as citizens when we ask basic questions. The chairman or city council members will say, well, it's buried in the staff report, go find it. And I would say that oftentimes it's fair to say that the staff reports are erroneous, they're incomplete, the staff reports are designed to be politically motivated one way or another to bring about a desired result. They often miss an opposing point of view or another perspective that would be very helpful for the council to digest before they make a decision, and it also would be very helpful for the public. And I also think it's a little disingenuous to be telling the public to go find your answer. Because when I was on the council, I kind of shared the council with a couple people who felt that, who would say something like, look, if I don't have the answer for you tonight, I will get you the answer, or I will direct staff to get you that answer in a reasonable time. And here's my phone number, and please get back to me, and I'm going to help you. But that's something we don't see anymore from the council. It's go find it for yourself. And I would like to see a housekeeping rule maybe that would refrain the council from doing just those things. Thank you.
Great, and thank you again for all your public comment on this. I appreciate that. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on housekeeping items? Nope, seeing no one, we will move into announcements. The City of Cotati has special open office hours on Monday evenings from 5 to 7 p.m. in the Community Development Department here at City Hall as part of its Cotati Open for Business program. This program provides personalized assistance and information to developers, current Cotati business owners, and those interested in starting a new business within the city. The Rohnert Park Cotati Regional Library hosts events for all ages, including art exhibits, book clubs, and children's programs. All events are free and open to the public. For more information, you can call the library at 584-9121. The Cotati Historical Society Museum is open regularly the second Tuesday of each month from 5 to 7 p.m. and on Saturdays from 1 to 4 p.m. For more information, please call 794-0304. And could I ask staff to just double check on those hours for our next meeting, because I'm pretty sure that's what their sign says, but it's a little different in here. The Cotati City Council invites interested individuals to apply to serve on the Sonoma County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. Full details and application forms are at City Hall in the City Manager's office or on the web at cotaticity.org. The annual Cotati Oktoberfest is set for Saturday, October 11th in La Plaza Park. For details, see the Chamber of Commerce website at www.cotati.org. And finally, the next evening with the mayor will be Wednesday, November 5th at 6:30 p.m. at the Redwood Cafe in downtown Cotati. Everyone is obviously welcome to that. We now are moving into a section we call our honorary mayor, and I was informed that our honorary mayor is not here this evening. Is that correct? That is correct. So we will sign and send a nice memo to Stephanie Coates of Rancho Cotati High School. Mr. Barrich.
Thank you, sir.
Is this on the honorary mayor?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I would like to be brief. Just want to bring to the City Council's attention, if I'm not correct, the last 3 honorary mayors that have been asked to come to the meeting have not shown up, and I really do question whether it's really been it's being an effective item for us each night, and I'm not sure what the reasons are. The council hasn't given any reason why the last few months we have had no honorary mayor show up, but I'm concerned. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can just quickly address the reason we haven't done it the last few months is during the summer vacation there's no school, and so we can't draw kids for the honorary mayor. But you're right. Unfortunately, this young individual's missed both meetings for this month, so thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
And we also, my goodness, I gave that proclamation away. You know what? I need to read that. Sorry. Hold on, folks. My fault. We have a proclamation for commending Dos Amigos Restaurant on its 15th anniversary. They're not here this evening, so we'll have a certificate that we can send to them.
They're working.
They're not here because they are working. That's correct. Thank you.
And it's 16 years now.
16 years. But I would like to read this into the record if I could. This is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Cotati congratulating Dos Amigos on its 16th anniversary. Whereas Cotati's local independent businesses help preserve the character of the city and give us a sense of community. And whereas Dos Amigos has been serving the City of Cotati and Sonoma County residents since 1998, and whereas Dos Amigos offers its customers a unique atmosphere for Mexican food served at their location in downtown Cotati, and whereas small businesses are a vital part of any city or town, not only because of their contribution to the local economy and workforce, but because of their commitment to the community in which they do business. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed on this 23rd day of September 2014, the City Council of the City of Cotati does hereby congratulate Dos Amigos on its 16th anniversary and wishes them continued success. Okay, we are now moving to the section we have for approval of final agenda. Do we have any changes?
Yes, Mayor DeLasso, I have a suggested change in sequencing of items. I would suggest that we switch item 9 and 10 on the regular agenda for the reason that we probably have some people who are here for the purpose of hearing about our budget for next year, but unlikely that there are a lot of people who will be wanting to wait to hear about the Santa Rosa Plain groundwater management plan, although not that it's not possible. It will be interesting.
All right, so we will switch items 9 and 10, if everybody can kind of keep their eye on the agenda there. And then we'll now move into citizen business. Any member of the public wishing to speak to the council on any item or items listed on the consent calendar or any matter or matters not listed on the agenda that are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council may do so at this time. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the council is not allowed to consider issues or take action on any item not listed on the agenda during this period. Comments of any member of the public are normally restricted to a total of 3 minutes in length per person for matters not on the agenda, and a total of 3 minutes per person in length for items on the consent calendar. And I have a couple of speaker cards, and the first one is, and I apologize if I butcher anybody's name in advance, but Logan Glasenup. That didn't sound right. You're smiling. I didn't get it right. Okay, fine.
Good evening, and my name is Logan Glassnap, so good job. I'm an organizer for Evolve, and we're a local nonprofit working to reform the commercial side of Prop 13. So I'm here tonight to urge the council to take up our Close the Loophole resolution. Over the past year, 91 local elected bodies across California have gone on record to support our resolution to reform Prop 13. And that list includes the Sebastopol City Council and 6 school boards right here in Sonoma County. Now, we're at a crossroads here in California, with education funding ranked 49th in the nation, and with municipalities all across the state struggling to fund essential services. It's become clear that we have 2 options. We can continue to cut services, or we can generate more revenue. And for those of us that believe we need to generate more revenue, then the best and the most fair way to do that is by reforming Prop 13, not by increasing the already high tax burden on individuals. Now, the reform we are advocating for will not change Prop 13 for homeowners, apartment owners, renters, or small business owners. Our campaign is focused on getting large, non-residential commercial properties to pay their fair share. Unlike homes, large commercial properties rarely change hands. And so many corporations are paying property taxes that are based on 1975 levels. To give you an example, Disneyland pays just 5 cents per square foot on their property taxes. It's 8 times less than the average homeowner here in California. So, there's a reason why in the last 36 years, no other state has passed a Prop 13 of their own. The way our system is set up right now is unfair to individual taxpayers, our cities, and our schools. It's time for a responsible reform. By simply getting large corporations to pay their fair share in property taxes, we can bring back at least $6 billion a year to our schools and to our public services without continuing to raise the burden on individual taxpayers. And the good news is that a majority of Californians agree. According to the most recent PPIC poll, 59% of likely voters support this reform. So I urge the council to agendize this resolution at your next meeting and join these 91 elected bodies by taking a stand for tax fairness. So thank you.
May I ask just a brief question, if I could? So to reference the resolution, do you have a website we could go to look for that?
It should be before you.
It's in this packet over here. I see. Great.
Yep.
Thank you very much. And
Thank
the
you.
timing?
What's that?
Is there a timing issue? That's always a good question.
Absolutely. We are working to have 100 elected bodies by the end of the year.
End of the calendar year?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very
And I
much.
will follow up with all of you tomorrow, too. Cool.
Very good, thank you. Please, yeah.
Sir?
Logan, if you can
Logan.
come back, sorry.
What is the PPIC?
It's a really good question, and unfortunately, I forgot, because it's the first time that I've looked at it. Sorry.
The Public Policy Institute of California.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking.
You're free to go, sorry, thanks. Yeah. Okay, and I also have a card for Tim Cavaney. How did I do on that name?
You did pretty good.
Great, pretty good, okay.
Thank you for having me. My name's Tim Cavaney. I love Cotati. I've lived in and around for years. I am in charge of infrastructure at the Cotati Accordion Festival, and I'm here to promote solar power. I'd like to see the city take a lead on this. There are very many companies that will actually install free power for individuals throughout the city. We can do it, and they'll do it for nothing. There's several companies that will do that, and I'd love to see you guys take a lead on that and have bragging rights, you know, for the cities around. Also, I think city buildings should all have solar power. The science is here. You go to Europe, everybody's got solar power. You walk around here, nobody's got solar power. So I would encourage you to encourage everybody to put panels on roofs and save some money, save some energy, knock off the coal-fired plants. It's a cool thing to do. Cotati's a cool city, and you guys are the guys to do it. So the other thing is, okay, yesterday, big news, 50 foundations totaling $50 billion have divested from fossil fuel, okay? And then another 600 individuals with many, many millions of dollars have consolidated to do the same. So this is an inevitability, okay? It's going to happen, and why not do it here? Why not do it now? Okay, so the distance between an idea and market acceptability sometimes is a long road. You know, when I walk around neighborhoods and I see all these, you know, empty rooftops, you know, that's a sure sign of that. You go to Europe, everybody's got solar power. If we look at our latitude, we're basically lower Mediterranean. Okay, one state in Germany has more solar panels than the entire United States of America. And the lower edge of Germany is probably about where Seattle is right now. Okay, so why aren't we doing this? So what I say is, give Cotati the bragging rights, show the other communities around us what we got. Stop? 3 minutes? I'm over? Okay.
If you'd like to wrap up in a sentence or two, feel free to do that.
Okay,
Our timer
thank you.
is not working tonight.
Thank you. I would also like to, bring up, any competition to the table. As far as, I'd love to see city council, every community building with panels, and I'd like to see some fair competition with that also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other cards. Are there any other speakers? Mr. Barrich?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will.
On the issue of taxes, let's do a little review. Corporations don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. Stockholders don't pay taxes. CEOs don't pay taxes. Taxes are passed on to the consumer through higher prices. Okay, this is in Basic Economics by Thomas Sowell in its 4th edition, if anyone wants to read it. Now, I want to bring your attention to the board behind you. At one point, to council members, there was a large rendition of the city's vision statement, and it was up there for a long time. I had something to do with the vision statement when I was on the council, and the council put a lot of work into putting that vision statement together. At times it was a little humorous to sit here and watch the proceedings when oftentimes the vision statement was in conflict, but I would like to see the vision statement actually return. And so I'd like to get a report on that. Also at the last council meeting, the council and I had a lively discussion about sales taxes regarding the budget discussion. And the fact is that after Measure A passed in 2010, there was a bump in the sales tax revenues, but then sales tax revenues declined. And when the chairman asked the city staff, wasn't it true that sales taxes actually did still increase, what you're failing to remember is that you will never know how much sales tax revenue you lost by not lowering the taxes. Lowering taxes brings in more revenue. It increases sales. That's a standard principle in basic economics. If you want less of something, you tax it. If you want more revenue, you lower the sales tax rate. We debated this in 2010 and we debated it in 2013. So we do not know how many thousands and thousands of dollars we lost in sales taxes because you raised the sales tax rate. And also, Prue Draper came to the meeting last month, a couple weeks ago, and asked the council for help regarding a chicken coop across the street here on the old Folletti property that's falling apart, and asked the council for some assistance, be it financial or through volunteers. And I would ask the council, wouldn't it be wise to maybe ask the woman who sold us the property for over $3 million if she would like to donate a few bucks to fix the chicken coop over there? Because I'm sure the city council examined the property before we purchased the property for $3 million along with the county. And now that it's in dire need of repair, a chicken coop, maybe we can go to the seller and ask her if she might want to donate, rather than come to the taxpayers and ask us to fix a chicken coop that was in bad shape when you bought the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Is there anyone else? Mr. Carricker.
I'd like to offer some constructive advice. If the council would turn around and look at the wall behind them, you would see what I see, which look to be about 5 protruding screws or nail holes. It looks kind of like a Sonoma State dorm after the last student went home for the spring. So maybe you could make an agenda item to repair this sometime before the next council meeting. I think it would reflect well on you. On a more serious note, I see that Exchange Bank is about to move to the Oliver's location, and that looks like it's going to create a very large vacancy in the heart of downtown. I remember some 4 or 5 years ago when the downtown specific plan was first introduced, someone asked Marcia Sue Lustig, the departed Marcia Sue Lustig, exactly what sort of building would be welcome in the downtown specific plan. I'll never forget her answer. She said, "It won't be a bank. We don't like banks. Banks generally don't have windows." There's a conundrum, just another mess the downtown specific plan has put this city in. So my question to council and staff tonight, when Exchange Bank does vacate in the near future, exactly what plans do you have for that structure, and how will you welcome any business to move in there instead of doing everything you can to keep them away? Thank you.
And thank you for those comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council? All right, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. For the gentleman who had some comments regarding solar, item number 8 on our agenda tonight is looking at the possibility of installing a 105 kilowatt photovoltaic system, and that would be in addition to the 35 kilowatt photovoltaic that we currently have up. So maybe we are progressive. Maybe we're moving forward on that stuff. So there is some good news ahead. I don't know if you'll be here for that, but there's information available on our website regarding that. Okay, do we have any direction on any future agenda items from council members?
Not at the moment.
Nothing at this point? Okay. Then we'll go on to the consent calendar. We have items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
I would move to approve the consent calendar, items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 inclusive.
I would second that. I do have a brief comment.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. So let's go ahead with any comments or you may have.
I would like
Councilmember
to
Harvey?
pull item 3.
You'd like to pull item 3? Okay. Then we'll have to have an amended motion, so hold that thought for now. Are there any other items, I should have asked that first, that need to be pulled? No, so just item 3. So can we just re-motion? We don't need to cancel on that?
No, you can take up the other consent items in one motion and then take up item 3.
Okay. So then let's start that again.
So how about I will move to approve the consent calendar, items 2, 4, 5, and 6 inclusive.
And I will amend my second, and I still have comment.
Sure. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. So further comments, please. Councilmember Harvey.
I have a comment regarding the waste delivery agreement, Exhibit D. In there, there's a waste management agency fee of $4.50. Those fees are set by the Sonoma County Waste Management Agency, and I know that there is a discussion, and that item will come before that board. And so that particular amount may not be the same, because that amount is set by the JPA. So I just wanted to point out that that amount is not, may not be what ultimately is charged.
So, but if we're approving, should we take the vote and approve this settlement agreement, is that something that would need to then come back to us?
No, Mayor. The authorizing resolution gives the town attorney the ability to make corrections as necessary or edits, and I will research this item. It was just brought to my attention today, and if the fee amount is incorrect, we can go ahead and correct that and just inform you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any further comments on any of the items? Okay, so we have items 2, 4, 5, and 6. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Please show it's a 5-0 vote in favor. And let's talk about item 3. Councilmember Moore.
Item 3 in and of itself, I think, is fine. Of course, we need to have an alternate to the REMIF board. I thought the timing on designating the assistant city manager as the alternate might be a little burdensome at the moment, because I think that the future alternate to the REMIF board should be a finance person. So I thought it might have been a little bit premature to appoint the assistant city manager in light of all of the duties that he's currently having and will have as we move forward with particular staffing issues. So I don't know if there is a urgency to have an alternate at this point. And if there is, if it's just more of a figurehead appointment for the time being, and if not, it might be something we could address as we are more settled.
To me, it seems like having an alternate is always a good idea, just in general. What if the primary is not available to go for myriad reasons? So I would be fine with that, and I'm assuming there was a discussion that took place about workloads and things like that, making the assumption that you would never miss a meeting, pretty much. So that's just an assumption on my part, though. Did you have some comments, City Manager?
There is a need for the city to have an alternate to REMIF, and I would recommend that the alternate be a staff person, because staff are more readily available to attend REMIF meetings as required. And in terms of who that person is, the council may prefer to have someone with a finance background as the REMIF representative. However, we don't have a permanent finance director at this time, and will not for a number of months. So in the interim, it's important that the city have a staff person designated as the alternate.
So that goes back to my question. Is there a sense of urgency on that?
Again, I mean, is there ever a sense of urgency in having a backup position for whatever it is that we're talking about? I think it's good to have. I don't know that there's a sense of urgency, but I don't see the harm in it myself.
This is an item that can come back to the council readily at any time. So I would recommend that Damien is appointed at this time so that we're covered. And then in the future, when the city has a permanent finance person designated, then you may wish to reconsider. And as a reminder, in January of each year, the council does reconsider all of your appointments to the various, organizations, so that might be a time when you would address this again. But in the meantime, I think it's important to have coverage.
Hold on just a second. So, Councilmember Lamb?
You turned it off when you pulled it forward. Take it.
There we go. We're having a little intermittent microphone here. But I just wanted to say in terms of urgency, you're right. It's never urgent until all of a sudden there's an important meeting and for some reason the primary can't make it at the last minute. And I think that's happened to all of us at one time or another. So I think the backup's real important. And I would agree, since at this point we don't really have the option of having a permanent finance person to put there. We can revisit that later, and it seems logical. And I have the sense that if that's the decision we go to, I'm sure Assistant City Manager would not be terribly sad to have one more of his myriad tasks taken off his list. That would probably be just fine, I suspect. So I'd be supportive, I think, tonight for going along with the resolution as it stands myself.
Any further discussion on this item?
So I guess I'm a little confused because don't we have an alternate?
We don't.
Right.
We previously did, but we don't currently.
Oh, okay.
Micah Hinkle was the alternate.
Okay, thank you. That was,
Oh.
I didn't have the current sheet with me, so that wasn't clear.
Yeah, I'm not, vehemently opposed to it. I just thought Mr. Obid had a pretty full plate at the moment, so.
Sure. No, and I'm sure staff appreciates those sentiments. And we're in a free country. You can feel free to vote any way you'd like on this item, too. So it's all good. It's all good. Once we have a motion in a second, that would be step one.
That was almost like a drum roll. That was perfect timing. I'd like to move that we adopt a motion assigning Assistant City Manager Damien Obid as an alternate member to REMIF Board of Directors.
Is there a second for that?
I'd second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Was that a 5-0? I didn't hear you. Yes, so that was a 5-0 in favor. Thank you very much.
It wasn't an exuberant.
It doesn't need to be. No, that's fine. All right, we are moving on to public hearing and item 7. This is regarding NorCal Glass Products appeal of a Planning Commission decision. And we'll go to our Community Development Director, Vicki Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, council members. This item before you tonight is a recommendation that the City Council adopt a resolution denying the appeal of a Planning Commission decision to uphold the Director's use interpretation. Adoption of the resolution would not allow NorCal Glass Products to operate at 7700 Old Redwood Highway, Suite B. As a little background, in March of this year, Mr. Bill Place, who owns NorCal Glass Products, came to City Hall requesting approval of a zoning certification, which is essentially a business license clearance from the city. Zoning certificates confirm that the particular uses are allowed in the zone that the applicant is applying for, and they're required prior to every business license issuance. Staff reviewed the information that Mr. Place provided and subsequently denied the request because the business description was not an allowable use within the applicable Northern Gateway planning area of the Downtown Specific Plan. To orient everyone, 7700 Old Redwood Highway is the parcel immediately north of the Chevron station at Old Redwood Highway and Gravenstein Way.
A few days later, on March 18th, at the request of the property leasing agent and the business owner, city staff member Micah Hinkle met with them at the subject property to look for himself at their invitation about the operation. What Mr. Hinkle found was that NorCal Glass had already moved into the space and had commenced business operations. Having an opportunity to view the operation, Mr. Hinkle confirmed that indeed the operation was more similar to the city's use categories of industrial zoning districts and not those of the Northern Gateway planning area, which are predominantly retail, restaurant, and entertainment uses. Staff reiterated their earlier decision to deny the zoning certification, and an appeal of that determination was subsequently filed on March 31st of this year. The appeal went to the Planning Commission this past June, and the Planning Commission, after hearing public testimony and deliberating the facts, adopted Resolution PC 14-06 denying the appeal. And an appeal of that Planning Commission decision was subsequently received, and that is the reason we're here tonight, is that the appeals of Planning Commission decisions come to you as the City Council. Chapter 17.22 of the Land Use Code contains a list of uses allowed by district within the city and stipulates that uses that are not listed are not allowed unless it can be determined through the making of certain findings that a proposed use is both similar and compatible to allowed uses. Neither city staff nor the Planning Commission could make the necessary findings to determine that NorCal Glass met those two stipulations and was then indeed a permissible use within that zoning district. The City Council tonight has an opportunity to reevaluate the facts and make a decision, or you can refer the matter back to the Planning Commission for further proceedings. Staff is recommending that the council deny the appeal, as we have, as I mentioned, not been able to make those findings and don't believe they can be made. And that is our recommendation for tonight. And that's a brief overview. I'm happy to fill you in on any facts that you'd like me to substantiate or to provide further information about definitions. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff at this point? Down this way?
At this point.
Not at this point? All right, then I would go ahead and open the public hearing on this. We do not have any speaker cards, but Mr. Moynihan, I know you are here, and please come on up. Sure.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Bryant Moynihan. I'm the property manager, Nexus Realty Group, Inc. is my company. And I'm here appealing on behalf of the Ronsheimer family. I hope you didn't spend a lot of time on your staff packet. It really is irrelevant. Bill Place, NorCal Glass has vacated the building. So I did want to, however, be able to pick up where I had started off on May 27th in front of you as the City Council. For you see, staff keeps pointing me back to the Planning Commission, but the reality is my concern was the administrative decision by your Assistant City Manager, who used sales tax revenue generation as a determining factor as to decide what businesses are allowed and which ones aren't. And that was just absolutely wrong. Now, when this all came about, we have two tenants who seek to occupy the same building, and they're the exact same use. They're both licensed contractors. They both sell and install a product. One, solar systems, the other, glass storefronts. We have a decision from your staff saying one's allowed and one's not allowed. Now, how they got to that decision, what information they based that on, is really irrelevant. They made a mistake. They could be consistent, say both are not allowed, or they could be consistent, say both are allowed. And there's enough latitude that they should have done one or the other. I wrote you recently, September 12th, a letter. I don't know Apparently members of the public are not aware of it, but you're undergoing a general plan update. A lot of the problems that revolve around this property stem from the specific plans that were adopted back, I believe, in 2009. Cotati's too small of a city to have this layered planning approach with specific plans and zoning ordinances under your general plan. You could simplify your life and everyone else's and avoid confusion like we see here today. There also should be a mixed-use land use designation. When you're talking the old Redwood Highway, you go up and down that. I mean, how many, well, it's over 100 years worth of different development. You have a mishmash of different uses and construction styles and materials, and it just doesn't neatly fit within one specific plan. You could have a more open interpretation and do things a lot easier. Your zoning map and zoning ordinance should be amended to provide for more permitted principal uses. That's considered business friendly. When you have to come down and get a zoning clearance, a lot of businesses just absolutely won't take the space. They walk away. Mr. Place, NorCal Glass, he's the hell out of Cotati, and he's not saying anything nice about Cotati or his experiences here. A lot of businesses that have looked at this building in the past were told no, they're not allowed in the building. If you look at the building, it's got 4 warehouse bays. It's really more of an industrial style building. And the users who want to go in that building are told you have to go on the other side of the highway. Problem is I can't move the building on the other side of the highway. So the specific plan land use designation and the zoning ordinance interpretations that were done here have hurt the property owners and have hurt the tenants seeking to occupy. Unfortunately, Ray Ronsheimer died a little over a month ago, and his widow, Shirley Ronsheimer, wants to get the hell out of Cotati too. She's instructed me, and we've put the building up for sale. Now, whether we can sell it or not is going to be really dependent on what your planning staff does. So at this point, I'm basically here to suggest to you that with your general plan update, you should refer this whole issue back to your planning commission. Have them understand what's going on and what went wrong here. Have them understand and make recommendations at this point in time as to where the general plan and these specific plans should go. What I've seen has just been handed to a consultant who's come up with a draft, and they're circulating the draft. That's not going to resolve this issue. It's going to ignore this issue, just like it's been ignored for the last 6 months. So I would hope, as a city council, that you return this issue, since there is no longer a code enforcement concern. You return this to the Planning Commission to take a look at the entire situation, realize what mistakes have been made, and try to correct on it so Cotati has a better reputation. This anti-business attitude, anti-property owner attitude that we're sensing very strong, and other commercial brokers tell me all the time, it's not something you want to keep building up. And when you have specific plans that are arbitrarily and capriciously interpreted, where the same use is defined 2 different ways, you have a real problem. It'd be great if you would take some time to address that problem. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this topic? Mr. Carricker.
You just heard expert testimony on what's been known for years, that around Sonoma County, this city has the reputation of being one of the worst imaginable places to consider building a business. Look at the Northern Gateway. Look at the 6.8 acres of weeds that could have been an Oliver's development. Now look at this building that's up for sale. This is the handiwork of 2 people. Marcia Sue Lustig, long departed, Diane Thompson, soon departed. How long will you support these 2? How long will you support their mistakes? How long will you let their elitism, arrogance, and short-sightedness choke this community to death? Now that you are free of both these unhealthy influences, you're free to draft a new plan, move forward, open the doors of this city to business. The idea that every Monday night you could have a meeting called Cotati Open for Business in the light of these facts is sheer hypocrisy. That makes all of you hypocrites.
Thank you for those statements. Mr. Berich.
Thank you, sir. I won't be long. I would ask the council also to return this to the Planning Commission for review. I was on the City Council in 2009 when the Downtown Specific Plan came before us, and I spoke to these matters of different tiered planning regulations that would be hurtful for the council, and I spoke for roughly about 7 minutes before I was interrupted by Janet Orchard, who said, "Do we have to listen to this?" It was a painful moment, not for me, but for the City Council, knowing that we were all elected to the council, not appointed, elected, and to have one council member actually try to choke an opposing point of view, a minority view, but a view nonetheless. And the fact is, we are here now. I had a fear that we would be here with applications like this. And sure enough, my worst fears have come true, and there will be more. On a strategic note, we have our city community development director quoting Mikhail Henkel. And unless Mr. Henkel has left any documents here that have been certified, or he has sworn that these are exactly his words, I would ask the council to disregard any statements that were possibly made by Mr. Henkel, because he's no longer here, and that would be unfair to the applicant as well. And Mr. Moore, excuse me, am I bothering you, sir? Am I boring you?
You are.
Please
Okay,
keep
well,
your
can I have your attention,
Mr.
sir?
Berich,
I paid for this
Mr.
microphone.
Berich,
Yes, sir.
I will ask you to sit down if you do not
Okay.
direct your attention towards here and not get into a petty
Here
discussion.
it is. You guys are the council. I just ask for your attention.
warnings.
I would ask for your attention, please. That's all I ask as a taxpayer. Thank you. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to comment on this tonight? All right, seeing no one, we will close the public hearing. I also noticed in the staff report that Mr. is it Place, or Place, who was the operator of NorCal Glass, also hired a consultant, is that correct, to look at this issue that we're discussing here?
Yes, that's correct. Mr. Place hired a consultant, a planning consultant from Sonoma County generally, and she reviewed the materials and came to the same conclusion that the use was, as described, was not an allowable use in the district.
Okay, so that's a broader concept, not just one that came up from our staff, so that's good to know. Are there any, while we start at this point, I'm going to start down at this end tonight because I've been looking too much to the right. Any comments or questions at this point for staff? So I'll start with Councilmember Landman.
If you want both, one quick question first, or maybe one or two. First of all, it was mentioned in public comment that the two proposed businesses, one solar, the other the glass, were both exactly, in essence, the same. My understanding, reading this really long and good report with a lot of on-the-record emails and letters back and forth, I understood that the solar did not fabricate or manufacture on-site. It was more retail.
That's correct. The solar, EES Solar, would operate a showroom with sales, so a sales office and a showroom that was open to the public with customers coming on site to view the products. And then they would then match the buyers up with contractors, and then the whole contracting piece and fabrication piece would happen elsewhere. So it was a retail sales showroom and an administrative office combination, which is completely different under our zoning code than an on-site fabrication.
Thank you, because that's what I thought I read there, and I just wanted to confirm that and make sure, because obviously that makes a big difference. I have to say, first of all, I have a lot of sympathy for everybody involved here, starting with Mr. Moynihan. I know right now, these last few years and for the foreseeable future, commercial property is overbuilt in Sonoma County because of the downturn. The demand is not there, and it's a problem for us. It's a problem for everybody, not just this county, this whole region. And the last estimate I heard from Sonoma County Alliance presentation just last week, they're thinking maybe 8 years before hopefully an economy allows us to dig out of this. So that's a difficult time for commercial property owners. But nevertheless, my sympathy really in this case goes to Mr. Place and Mr. Ronsheimer, because they should have been better represented here. From what I can see from this, they were put in a position where their livelihood was affected, and that doesn't seem to be necessary, and that's unfortunate. Having had the chance to look through the record and noticing the name of Jean Kopolchak, I just want to share so the council knows she's one of the probably best people you could get to weigh in on land use issues that I know of in this county. That carries a lot of weight with me in the fact that she agreed that the usage was inappropriate. I'm so sad about this because this whole thing could have been avoided if due diligence was done in the first place to make sure that the tenants weren't put in this position. And that's certainly not a problem for us, but at the same time, I hate to see it happen to anybody who wants to do business in this city, because it didn't have to be like that for them. Since we're not talking about looking at the specific plan tonight, but this particular issue, I will just say for the record, my take would be denying the appeal. I think the Planning Commission did their job well. As I look at the findings, I can't see any of them being made, and I think they've gone through it thoroughly, and there's no need to send it back. And I would be in support of moving a resolution to deny this.
All right, thank you. Vice Mayor Skillman.
Thank you. And I'm sorry as well that this continues to come across as Cotati being a place that's unkind to business. Really what the issue is that things were done out of order, that work was started before there was a permit that had been approved, and the fact also that the consultant agreed with our staff's assessment further bolstered that. And my real concern too is one of the emails from Mr. Moynihan stating that a lot of it had to do with his frustration of having an empty building, and that he encouraged both tenants to sign up and argued that they were permitted principal users. That I can understand the frustration, and I definitely sympathize with that, but it definitely seems like we were putting the cart before the horse and then just hoping that it would keep going. So it's unfortunate, but we definitely want to make sure that all the businesses that are operating here are doing so under permits, and don't start work until they have the permits that they need. And that's one of the reasons why we do have the open for business hours, so that people can find out what they need to get in line before they begin business. And I apologize, I'm under the weather, so I'm trying not to cough into the microphone. But anyway, I would also support the resolution to deny the appeal. And I understand the confusion too as far as wanting to come directly to us, but it needs to go through the Planning Commission first before it can come to us. So we need to go through the proper channels. Thank you.
All right, and thank you. Councilmember Hurd.
Some of my questions have been answered, but it states that the Empire shower doors was also the previous tenant, and they did exactly the same. Can you enlighten us on whether that was exactly the same? Was there the fabrication, or if you could help with that?
I did look back through the city business license database, and unfortunately there was never a business license issued to Empire Shower Doors, so I know nothing about their operation. So if they were operating there, which it sounds like they were, they never had the correct permits either.
Okay. And could you explain a little bit about the comments that are made around the fact that this is an industrial building? And what would make it that, and what if it is determined as that, why would we put something that's non-industrial in it? Can you help me with that?
Yes. I would like to clarify, there have been several comments by the public about layering of regulations. There's no layering of regulations here. The specific plan replaces the zoning ordinance. So just as with everything else, you have a general plan and a zoning code. In areas where there are no specific plans, you go directly to the land use code. In the 2 areas of the city where we have specific plans, you go to the specific plan. So it's the exact same set. There's no layering. In 2009, when the city adopted the downtown specific plan, was that 6 years ago now, the decision was made throughout that lengthy public process that buildings that were constructed prior to the adoption of that, regardless of how they were designed or constructed, the uses that the city envisioned moving forward were, as I mentioned, primarily retail, restaurant, and entertainment. That's perfectly within the purview of a city's strategic planning and follow-on zoning regulations to adopt a vision that they want to see happen. There are always going to be buildings that were constructed for another purpose. The same would hold for downtown auto body or some of the former motor court motel buildings. Those no longer meet, probably wouldn't function as the uses that are now envisioned in them. And that's just what happens over time as a city changes. You are going to adopt regulations that don't allow particular buildings to function as they were originally designed and used. We did offer to meet with Mr. Place on several occasions to find out if there were ways that the building could be used through an adaptive reuse or design offerings that we could make to help him with the building official and the fire district, and he chose to never take advantage of those invitations. So I hope that answers your question.
So is this adaptive reuse, is that the only way we would be able to use a building that's already there? Your other examples, like the auto body and things like that, I'm assuming what you're suggesting is that those would be replaced with something else. But what about a building that's not likely to be replaced? How do we make that fit? Because obviously everything isn't going to be replaced.
Yeah, I could imagine some adaptive reuse being removal of roll-up doors and replacing that with solid building wall that would, or maybe a storefront with glass so that you could view products in it, so that you could have solid walls for either display area, more like a retail building. So that building was constructed more, as we all know now, for industrial uses. So it has roll-up doors that don't necessarily lend themselves to retail uses.
So that would really be the only way that that building could be used and meet the requirements of the specific plan, correct?
Not necessarily. Someone like EES Solar could go in there today and perform the way that they do. It just depends on particular businesses. EES Solar may go in there with some kind of equipment display, but that building may not be suitable for, say, a restaurant or a clothing boutique. It just depends on particular businesses, but it could be used today.
Okay. And then, since the appeal is for this one, NorCal Glass to come in here, and NorCal Glass has kind of walked away, what would be the purpose of us doing anything with this? Help me understand that.
There's no upside unless Mr. Place wanted to come back. The determination that was made, which was appealed, was specific to his operation at that specific location. So there would be no upside in referring this back to the Planning Commission. I believe what Mr. Moynihan is wanting to discuss is that he believes that the overall regulations in the specific plan are too restrictive. But that's not an action that we would take up through this appeal. And we have, through the draft general plan update, had some 22 meetings now to discuss the uses that are allowed. And it is a mixed-use corridor that allows a variety of mixing on individual sites.
So is it fair to say that the approach that Mr. Moynihan is going with in looking at the general plan update and draft EIR, that at this point this is the appropriate forum for him to get any changes that may need to be made in the general plan? I mean, his direction is the appropriate one to take, given this business has moved on?
The best direction for Mr. Moynihan would be to comment, yes, on the draft and on the EIR. We have taken some comments that he directed to me earlier on the general plan, and those are now in the batch to be addressed through the general plan, and we're happy to take those up until October 24th.
Okay, that's all my questions.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Councilmember Landman. I think he had one quick follow-up, and then we'll go to Councilmember Moore.
Thank you for that, and thank you for your patience. I will make this quick. I just want to say, before we move off the subject of the building, perhaps having originally a slightly industrial design with roll-up doors, that it's all in the usage. It's not the building. Like was mentioned, I can't remember the name, but there's a place down in Sausalito that was originally something very similar to that. I think it was probably a mechanics thing because it's out by the docks and all that, so it's probably marine mechanics. Something that's been repurposed into a very nice and rather pricey French restaurant. So it's obviously not something I go to often, but it worked very nicely, and there wasn't a lot invested in changing the infrastructure. So you can see that for a restaurant, for a storefront. Also, you wouldn't even have to change that for me, because I remember one of the longest lasting, more successful businesses, and there was an aquarium, which worked perfectly in that, was retail and worked for years. And as far as I know, there was no manufacturing of fish on site, so I think it would still be allowable. So I just wanted to put that forth. That building probably is very useful. It's all in how the property is managed through the leasing agent. That's the important thing, to find the right person and go through the appropriate steps first to make sure that no problems ensue.
Yes, City Manager, you have a comment?
I was just going to jump in here for a minute. I wanted to let you know that this situation is not unusual. It happens in most cities where a realtor will frequently make the mistake of allowing potential tenants to sign a lease for a use which does not fit with the zoning code or a specific plan. So that's what we have here. And I wanted to let you, or just to remind you, that our planning documents went through many years of work with staff and council and the community, with a whole lot of community input. So these are not documents that were generated by a couple staff in the back room. It was really a community effort. And I also want to remind you, as you know, that Cotati is business friendly, and being business friendly does not mean that we don't have rules and that we don't enforce these zoning codes and other regulations that are the product of so many years of work. We do enforce those, and our staff work really hard with the business community to find flexibility and to try to bring good businesses to Cotati. And I will let you know that I regularly receive very positive comments about our Community Development Department and how business friendly they are. And so in this case, we weren't able to make it work with a use that simply doesn't fit with our specific plan. And there was an unfortunate error that was made, and we weren't able to fix it for the tenant. So that is unfortunate, but it does not mean that we're not business friendly.
All right, thank you for those comments. Councilmember Moore, any comments?
I don't know that I can add anything new to the comments that have already been made. I would concur with Mr. Landman and some of the other council members that I think the loser in this is Mr. Place. Having a tenant take occupancy without understanding what the permit process is really is a result of poor direction. And I'll just leave it at that.
All right, thank you very much. I really don't have any additional comments at this point either. I think everything that needed to be said has been said, so I'd be looking for direction from council with a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution denying the appeal of a planning commission decision to uphold a director use interpretation which would not allow NorCal Glass Products to operate at 7700 Old Redwood Highway, Suite B.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? I think we've... Yes, Councilmember Harvey?
Just a comment. I would continue to encourage Mr. Moynihan to be an active participant in the general plan update. I think that that's the way that we change the rules and regulations. So I would applaud him for getting involved and helping us have the best general plan we can.
All right, thank you for that. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Show it's a 5-0 vote in favor. And we're now moving into the regular agenda, which is item 8, and that will be the City Hall photovoltaic solar project, and that'll be the Assistant City Manager, Engineering, and Director of Public Works, man with the longest title, Damien Obid.
And remit alternate.
Should have added that.
Need to add to his title.
Right now? Well, he hasn't started. I can't. Can we actually, we're going to take a recess for 5 minutes, if we could. Thank you for that brief intermission, and we're going to reconvene, and we will be going back to item 8, the City Hall photovoltaic solar project. Damien.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. So this item, as you stated, is for City Hall, sort of in the large sense, City Hall, Community Center, Cotati Room, and Police Facility, solar panels. And I'll also add before I get started that we have some people in the audience here that represent some of the organizations that I'll talk about in my staff report. We have representatives from Optony, Jonathan Whelan back there, and David Patowski with Sunetric, and then also a representative from SolEd, David Kuhner, thank you. Just met him tonight. Back in 2012, we first learned of what's called the SEED Fund, and that stands for Sustainable Energy and Economic Development. And this is modeled after an effort in Silicon Valley that was designed to remove barriers to solar power. And it does this primarily through establishing a fund that allows for no upfront cost for planning and site assessments, as well as group procurement. So SEED is a partnership with Strategic Energy Innovations and Optony, and Optony is in this mix is essentially what I would call the city's rep. They don't do solar panel installations, but they're solar power experts. So they're involved throughout the process in reviewing the various documents and the proposals that we got earlier on. And back in May 22nd to be exact, in 2013, the City Council authorized participation in the SEED program. And that initial MOU authorized them to Optony to do the site assessment and feasibility study. And out of that feasibility study, which we got back in August of that same year, there was a recommended solar system of about 164 kilowatts for the group of buildings here at the City Hall complex. And subsequent to that, as you know from a prior council meeting, we also have been working with Siemens on an energy retrofit project, which affects the same buildings that the solar panel installation will be going on. So Siemens helped us with a revised energy projection that revised down the actual meter usage based on what we think we'll have after the energy retrofit project's complete. So in terms of sequencing, the energy retrofit project would go first, and then the ideal situation is we have a couple months of real-time data to just double-check the projections and then do the final sizing and installation of the solar panels. But from that projection and resizing, it took it from a 164 kilowatt system down to a 105 kilowatt system. In October of 2013, the City of San Rafael basically led the procurement process for soliciting requests for proposals, and they took the lead on a group of 13 public agencies. Cotati is one of them. The other agencies are listed in the packet. But this is sort of the group procurement process. We're all in this group moving through this together. And in December 2012, January 2013, a multi-agency team reviewed the proposals that were received from the RFP that San Rafael put out. And out of this review, the preferred vendor team was Sunetric, SolEd, and the Danlin Corp. So there's a partnership to install and finance and maintain the solar panel systems. And that's assuming a PPA structure. So the solar proposal that's in the packet is using a PPA structure. It's a power purchase agreement, which basically means that Sonetrach installs the panels and they maintain them and they own them. And they sell us power and we agree to buy the power. So it's an approach that allows us not to have to worry about the panels. We just basically provide them the space on our property to install them, and they run them and sell us power, and we buy the power. And before I go on with that discussion, I'll also point out that we looked at all the different ways of doing this. We looked at lease financing. We looked at straight purchasing. The PPA is just the most beneficial for cost and operations and maintenance reasons. There really wasn't a lot of benefit in just buying it outright, except that we lay out a bunch of money at one time up front, whereas the PPA model doesn't require a bunch of capital outlay, requires zero, in fact, and the payback wasn't worth the upfront investment. So the PPA agreement, the draft one, is attached to this packet, and it's a 20-year agreement with an option for a 5-year extension, and there's buyout provisions at years 7 and 15. And the PPA agreement that's in the packet, again, because Santa Fe was the lead on the procurement, they're also the lead with some pro bono attorneys as well as their own attorneys in reviewing the PPA and vetting a lot of the issues any municipalities would have. So by the time it got to us, for our own attorney and staff review, most of those issues have pretty much been vetted already. In the council packet, there's an attached map of the proposed locations for where the panels would go. And basically, they consist of a shade structure, like a carport kind of structure, on East School Street in front of the community center. Another one inside the City Hall complex building, sort of the center parking lot, another shade structure type mount. And then some panels mounted on the West Sierra side of the police building, which the chief will be happy to know about. And the panels are sized to offset approximately 90% of our power usage, but that works out to be 100% of the power bill, just based on the rate schedule that we changed to with a solar panel installation. So right now we have a flat rate, and then with a solar panel installation, you can switch to a time of use rate. So you pay, if you didn't have solar panels, you pay very high rates in the middle of the day and then really low rates at night. But with a solar panel installation, it's feeding power in during the day when the rates are high, so it basically gives you credit at that high rate during the daytime, and then then you take power off the grid at night. And then some other provisions I'll just point out. I already talked about Sonetrach owning and operating the panels through the term of the PPA. Cotati would own the renewable energy credits. So we have greenhouse gas reduction goals through council resolution, and these RECs we could hold and maintain to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions profile. Alternatively, if we so choose, we could sell them, in an open market as green credits. Although I wouldn't recommend that kind of approach until we've offset our own use, and then that's typically an approach you take when you have excess credits to sell. The energy use will be monitored. Part of the terms of the agreement is that there would be like a public kiosk as well as ways, through the website to monitor the actual output, the real-time output of these panels. And it's something for public education. That's a nice feature that's in there. And also in the back of the packet, in terms of the PPA structures, I'll point out that there's 3 different cash flow scenarios shown. There's one with a 4% assumed energy escalation rate, a 2%, and a 0%. And the 4% is what the group of, sort of the group procurement group is using as a projection. That's just based on a lot of utility rate history, and that's it's a very conservative estimate of year-over-year escalation in energy costs based on, I believe it's 30 years. But just to run a sensitivity analysis, I had also asked David with Synetric to run a 2% and a 0% energy escalation. 2% is highly unlikely to ever occur, that it would actually average 2% over 20 years. And of course 0% is virtually impossible that we'd have 0% escalation in energy over the next 20 years. But even in that worst case scenario, with 0% escalation in energy and no discount, no group procurement discount, it basically is even with those two hyper-conservative scenarios, it still basically breaks even. It's like $1,000, something like $1,000 contribution at the end of it. So in the council packet, there's also a description of the group procurement discounts. If the municipalities or other organizations that are involved in this process agree to move forward on it by the end of September, there's a 10% discount on the project, which is shown as one of the cash flow scenarios. If it's sometime in October, and there's also some megawatt triggers there too. If there's sometime in October, maybe 8%, and then sometime in November, it would be 6%. And it also is contingent on the group of us all achieving it, all building at least 2 megawatts of power. And as of, and I think maybe we can get an update on how that's going, but the last I heard, we were very close to it. And Cloverdale is a fairly large installation. It's a 1 megawatt installation. And so that by itself would put it over. And I did get I got a commitment from SolEd, the financing part of the team, that if we were to move forward with it on October 14th, which, as you probably would note in here, is after the end of September, they still would honor the 10% group procurement discount for that. And after that exceedingly long staff report, I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I would actually at some point ask Synetric to come up and give us an update, or maybe Optiny, Jonathan Whelan, to come up and give us an update on how it's going.
Sure, no, and I appreciate that. I think the staff report gave us a lot of info. There might be some, and I'll hopefully just suggest brief questions for staff from council, and then we'll have these folks come up and give us any additional information which may generate even more questions. So any questions, Councilmember? You're going to hold off? Vice Mayor, any questions? This direction? Wow, so everybody took my word and they're not going to say a word. That'll never happen again, I'm sure. So this is very exciting opportunity that we have in front of us, so it's nice to see. I do want to say that I appreciate the lease language, because it seems like there's a number of options that we can take down the road that'll benefit the city should we decide to want to own these, at some point, or back out completely. But I mean, this is a very exciting system. So with that, I'm going to open the public hearing, and I have no speaker cards here. Mr. Barrett, would you like to come up and start this off?
Financing, financing, financing. Such a famous word here at City Hall, because we don't have the money saved away for a project like this. But let me ask you, if I understand you correctly, and maybe you can ask the city engineer, are you proposing photovoltaic panels on the roof above us?
This was not one of the buildings, I believe, that was shown in the map that had PV system on it. Is that correct? I think it was City Hall, a carport. There was a couple of photographs, aerial photos in the staff report. There was a carport, and I think there was one other structure, but not this building here.
Right, that's correct. Not on City Hall, because there's too many angles on the roof, so it makes it inefficient to install panels.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, folks, because I think it's probably pretty well known that City Hall is probably one of the most dangerous and unsafe buildings to be in the city. And it was a few years ago when the project of re-roofing City Hall came up, when I was on the council, that our former police chief, Stewart, sat in on a budget session when this issue of re-roofing the building came up, where he said that he strongly advised against it because this building is in dire need of earthquake retrofitting, and that even through a moderate shaker, it would ruin the integrity of the walls, and the roof would have to be replaced in its entirety. And I want to thank our former police chief for his 30 years of service here and watching the structural conditions of the building to make that observation. But when the police station was built, a few of us slowed down the process of the police station to make it more environmentally sound and more energy efficient. It was the police chief who tried to push through the poor designs, but it was the citizens who slowed it down to make sure that solar and better skylights and better lighting inside the police station would be used. To the extent that some of us argued that the carports currently in the rear of the police station would have been a perfect location for photovoltaic panels to not only feed the grid, but also feed any future electric police cars that the city may own. At that time, it was a bad idea, and we advised, whatever you do, please do not plant any trees in front of those carports that will grow, that will make it inappropriate or impossible to put photovoltaic panels on top of those carports in the future. What did the city do? They planted redwoods. Now those redwoods are almost 30 feet high, which makes photovoltaic on top of that carport nearly impossible without removing the trees. That was a huge oversight on the part of the city to not use those carports as a possible site for photovoltaic. And feel free to go out there and look at it yourself, because the city really missed the ball on that one. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Yes, sir. And Mr. Tim Cavaney. Still have your name here.
Yeah, I commend the city, the council, the business people here. They have a very good business model, and it is exciting that everybody is considering solar. I would like to, however, just give a chance for another resolution to putting solar in Cotati. So they're talking about September, October. Is there an opportunity for somebody to give another business model, or are you entertaining any other companies?
Well, I think that my understanding is this is a coalition of a number of agencies in Sonoma County, Napa County, and Marin County, and so it's gone through an RFP, a request for proposals. So I'm thinking that work has been done, and we're now at the point of having a company selected, and we're here to either approve or modify or not approve all of this evening. That's why it's agendized.
Okay.
So, but I think if you have discussions and you'd like to check in with staff afterwards, you guys can exchange a phone number or an email or something. You want to continue the conversation, feel free to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. So I think at this point, if there's no further public comment, if we could have the consultants come up one at a time. You guys fight amongst yourselves who wants to come first. There you go. There's this sure winner right there. And if we could just have your name and the company name, to be great.
Sure. My name is David Petovsky. I work with Sunetric Solar. We were the lead respondent on the RFP, and we will do the engineering, procurement, design, EPC, engineering, procurement, and construction of the project. And I've been working with Damien from the beginning since we were awarded the project. A couple clarifications. So on a PPA, the O&M, so all of the operations and maintenance of the system belong to the owner. That will be SolEd. They're the financier. They actually own it. It's a service contract with the city, so the only lease is of the actual property where this will be, and I'm not even sure if lease is the right term. I'm sure I'll be corrected. A license a site license. So it's really a service contract where, in essence, the energy will be coming from your solar or the solar panels that are located on the property, and your obligation is to buy the energy. So it's really a replacement of Sonoma Clean Power and PG&E in that regard, though you'll always be connected to them, because at night, when the panels are not generating power, you'll be buying power from them, which is, by the way, when power is cheapest. The discount, gladly, happy to say that this afternoon, Napa County Office of Education brought us to the hurdle for the discount. So now it's no longer well, there are two hurdles. One is the aggregate system size of 2 megawatts, and the other is the date that you sign. So the first hurdle has been met. But the discount does not go away if you were not to decide at your next meeting, which we've extended to the 14th. It would just go down to 8% if you then decided to do it at a later date. Any questions of me?
Do we have any questions from council at this point?
I think I'll wait till everybody.
You want to wait? Okay. Not at this point?
Sure.
We may call you back up, though, just in case. So.
Happy to do it.
Thank you.
And good evening, everyone. I am Jonathan Whalen with Optany and the Seed Fund. So as Damien mentioned, we are the city's consultants in this matter. We're independent solar project consultants really working on your behalf as well as the behalf of the other participants in this process to make sure you get a good deal with a good vendor. And so the RFP process has taken a long time, but it's been thorough, and we're happy to be at this point now to have this project before you. Just, I don't really have a whole lot to add. I know there was a pretty in-depth staff report there in front of you. Just a quick update on some of the other agencies that have received council or board approval so far that are ready to sign agreements prior to September 30th. The City of San Rafael has approximately 900 kilowatts. Again, City of Cotati is considering 105. Town of Yountville is considering about 290 kilowatts, and that got approved at council last week. Napa County Office of Education, as David mentioned, that was approved earlier today. That's around 270 kilowatts. City of Mill Valley was approved earlier in September. That's about 310 kilowatts. Sonoma County Water Agency has been approved. They haven't signed the contract yet, but they've got a site that's about 60 kilowatts. The Sonoma County Employees Retirement Association, sorry if I'm going a little fast here, but Sonoma County's Employees Retirement Association, they actually have a site that's under construction right now and is about 100 kilowatts. The City of St. Helena had council approval for about 460 kilowatts or so. They've got to go back through the public hearing process, just like City of Cotati, so that'll be should receive final council approval in early October. The City of Novato is looking to go forward with a direct purchase of a system, likely in October or November, of about 40 kilowatts, smaller system size. And then, as Mr. Obid mentioned, the City of Cloverdale has a combined capacity of around 1 megawatt or 1,000 kilowatts. And so, really, we've seen a lot of movement here in this last month. I missed a couple other that are still considering. Marinwood Community Services District is considering about 80 kilowatts, and the Southern Marin Fire District is also considering tomorrow night a system of about 40 kilowatts. So, the very quick update there. Also happy to answer any questions you might have over the next few minutes. Thank you.
Any questions from council at this point? Nope. All right. Thank you for now. Appreciate it.
Spelling of my last name is not self-evident, so I thought I would provide that. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. David Kuhnhart, President and CEO of SOLAD Benefit Corp. We're delighted to be here, and we feel that we've been very professionally and fairly treated by your assistant city manager and staff in our negotiations to date, and look forward to wrapping it up. I just wanted to say a couple of additional things to make sure that it's completely clear what this is and isn't. It is a service agreement, as Mr. Potofsky said. It's not a purchase, it's not a lease, it's not a financing. So the good city of Cotati does not have a lien, doesn't have any ongoing finance obligations, and this will not count against your liabilities as a community. It is just a service agreement, just exactly like your service agreement now is with Pacific Gas and Electric. Only you'll know that 100% of what we produce is clean instead of 17 to 20-something%. Finally, the solar power purchase agreement forbids us from putting any lien on your property. And the city does own these pieces of property, and so we want to have the lightest possible touch on the real estate. And we're doing that not with a deed of trust, not with a lease, not with anything that gets recorded that is heavy, or an easement, but simply a license, which gives notice to the business community and notice that we have the right to fix, repair, replace if necessary, and remove ultimately the solar facility. Happy to answer any questions that may come up, and thank you again for your very professional staff. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you very much for those comments. Please come back up.
Just one last clarification on the service agreement, unlike the utilities, is fixed. So it's a fixed year-one cost with a fixed annual escalation up to year 15. In year 16, it de-escalates by 10%. So the city will know exactly how much they're spending each year. So unlike the utilities, these are fixed prices that can be, in essence, a hedge against, or at least a very predictable budget item.
Very good. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing, knowing that we may need to call one of you gentlemen back up here for some further clarification. But, so council, we're comments or questions at this point for staff or the consultants? Everybody's pointing your way, Councilmember Landman, so please, go ahead. Antsy.
I don't think I'm really that anxious. I think I just wandered into it, but either way. A couple of actually just real simple ones, and actually I thank the last speaker because that segues perfectly into the question I wanted to ask. So these are fixed costs, unlike moving costs that we have with utilities, investor-owned utilities or CCAs. And so obviously they escalate the first few years, then they drop the last few years. My question would be on the assessment, I wonder if you could speak, or whoever would be the appropriate person, on the assessment of how low this initial rate is, because obviously there's a concern rates vary over time. This is not a hugely significant portion, but it's still a portion of our electrical thing, that particularly if it's a long-term contract and if rates drop for some reason. That isn't usually my experience, but I have to ask this question. So I wanted to ask you to speak that. Now, I understand we can opt out, and I also understand, though, that there's termination fees. So my question would be probably how large those are, or if they escalate or anything. From my first glance at this, I think we're completely covered, but I just wanted somebody to go over that part a little bit for my peace of mind and the public's.
So I'll start the answer, and then maybe I can have someone jump in.
I'm seeing a lot of head nodding out there. I think they're ready.
Yeah.
Can I just ask a procedural question? I apologize. Do you want us to gather all the questions and answer them at once, or one at a time?
That would be the mayor's prerogative.
I have no idea, but just start writing them down, and we'll call you when we need them. There you
go. So there is an initial termination, as is in the staff report, prior to the actual construction, and
it's page 5?
Yeah, it's on page 5 of 7. And then, I think David from SOLED maybe could, or maybe David from Synetric could speak to that exactly. But the fair market buyouts are at year 7 and 15, and I'd also ask maybe you to speak on if the buyout for whatever reason was on a different year, how that might work.
Good. And how we would take a look at where we're starting from in terms of how that rate looks compared to if we were shopping through the investor-owned utilities or CCAs in terms of rate.
All right.
Yeah, whichever one of you wants to attack that one, it's fine.
And so I can at least start the response here. As far as the comparison with the investor-owned utilities, what we at Optony have done an analysis of case studies looking at commercial facilities and how their prices have changed over the last 16 years, from 1998 to 2014. And for the A10S rate schedule, which is what you're on right now, the average rate over that time has been it's been about 3.99%, so right around 4% annual increase over that time since the deregulation process started for the utilities. For the fiscal year 2014, the CPUC just approved a 6.9% revenue increase for PG&E. For 2015, 4.57% revenue increase, and for 2016, a 5% revenue increase. So we would expect that that would more or less be your rate of increase over the next 3 years. What we've seen with the CCAs is that they are cognizant that they've got to compete with the utility pricing, and so we've seen from Rain Clean Energy anyway that they've been largely mirroring the PG&E increases for their rates in order to remain slightly below, and but not too far below, I guess you could say. And we would expect that Sonoma Clean Power would follow suit, although we certainly don't know the future for how they'll run. But I hope that answers at least part of the question.
And I think you have backup coming here.
This is, if I may say, the kind of the central risk question that you have to face. Does it make sense for you to sign on to 2.5% per year plus each year, then minus 10% in years 16 through 20? And all the experts you can look at out there give you a variety of different views, but our feeling is that the 2.5% is well under what almost everybody else's projection is. You can see, look at UC Davis, look at Stanford. Everybody has a different way of looking at this. Obviously, the state is monitoring this and makes its own kinds of projections, but that is an essential risk that you need to take. Except that in year one, we're offering a savings. Starting right away, those, particularly with the discount, you will be getting a savings in year one. And so if we're only escalating at 2.5, and for the next 3 years, PG&E is going up a little steeper.
Thank you. This was my key question. Where are we starting from? And, yeah, and that kind of explains it with the escalator.
You're starting at a position of savings right away. And then the other question is, how does the buyout play into this, and where does that stand? And termination values and buyout are two different things, and the termination values really have to be our cost of canceling the business. And so in the first 5 years, while there's compliance with our tax equity partner, who is, we are benefiting from something you can't benefit from, which is the federal tax code and the 30% ITCs, and our partners will take those. But if you were to buy the system, or something drastic were to happen in year 3, there's recapture of credits. And so the early years termination values will look very high in the schedule that's way near the end. I think it's Exhibit 5 in the solar PPA, near the end. And then they will be going down every year, because they only cover the third-party costs to us and our cost of money. And by the end of the 20th year, those termination values are very close to nothing. I think that it's an empty schedule in the draft that we've provided so far. I'm just telling you that the math that we do to fill in that schedule when it's time ready to sign.
So it's front-loaded in the early years, that first 5 years or so, and then there's a rapid drop-off.
It is very much front-end loaded, and it falls in every single year.
And the risk isn't really so much, from my perspective, at least in those first few years. It's what happens just past that is when...
Right. And the other two things I need to say is that as far as agreeing on a buyout value, the tax code requires that I can't say anything other than fair market value. We kind of get away with saying, well, that a buyout has to be the higher of that termination price or fair market value. We certainly can't say the lower of anything. And if somebody comes to you and says, oh, we can give you $1 discount on year 10, that's against the law. All of the tax attributes go away if somebody makes that promise of a discounted buyout in any year. So all we can really say is fair market value. But one of the advantages of our PPA rate that's going down in the future is that fair market value of that contract is going down. Nobody else, no other solar company in the industry is offering that, and from nobody else could you get that lower fair market value in the future that ours offers. The second thing that I need to say about the buyout is that we try to restrict the number of times for two different reasons. One is a tax reason. If you had, let's say, an infinite number of buyouts, then that could be deemed to be a sort of coercion on value, which really means you're the owner. And you don't want to be the owner, because I lose all the tax attributes that I sold to somebody else if you're the owner. And so we did in our negotiation restrict the number of buyout times to year 7, year 15, and year 20. And I'm hoping that you're happy with those periods in time, and we would be delighted to, negotiate over what that fair market value is and show you everything, because as a benefit corporation, we're going to be completely open book with you on our math.
Good. That'll be great. Well, thank you. I think you've answered my questions.
All right.
Last comment before it goes off. I would like to say that in general, I would have been happier seeing perhaps a local Sonoma County business doing the construction, but seeing as the involvement was over three counties and pretty equitably distributed, I'm more than satisfied with that. And thank you for answering my questions. I'm certainly supportive of approving the form of the PPA and also scheduling a public hearing.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Moore, do you have any questions or comments at this point?
I do have a few questions. If I understand Councilman Landman's questions, the historical rates that are coming in from PG&E were at 3.99, so over 14 years is roughly a 55 approximately % increase in the rates, give or take, not counting maybe the present value of money, et cetera, or some of the other, but roughly. And then with the 2.5% over 16, we're looking at potentially a 40% increase over 16 years. Roughly.
I would assume, I'm sorry, I don't have those.
Okay. Okay. So in that sense, it seems to make economic sense. A couple of questions I had was on at the end of 20 years, the system is in essence worth the fair market value. We don't know what the condition of that system is going to be in 20 years. So there's some certain risk assumptions in there. I mean, it could be worth nothing. It could be worth as much as it's worth now.
So you have some options at the end of the term.
Right.
You can ask us to remove it, and there is a reserve that starts in year 6 where SolEd will actually put this money into an escrow account for the removal of the system. So that's one absolute option. Please come take it away and remediate. Buy it out at fair market value or extend in a 5-year term.
Okay. So if for some reason the functionality of the system is nothing at 20 years, then that system is worth nothing, and it's been exhausted, so to speak. Then that's it. SolEd would come in and take that out if we didn't want it, or
if it's exhausted and it doesn't work, there's a 25-year warranty from the manufacturer on the panels.
Okay.
So, but let's just assume that it is no longer working in year 20. So at 19 years and 365 days, it dies. That is an absolute option in the contract to have it removed and remediate the site.
Okay.
Our intention, SolEd's intention, is to have the system continue to work and hope that you will extend the term. That's in our best interest. And the economics of this deal are all predicated on the system working. SolEd's cash flow and revenue stream is based on, after the tax benefits are taken, their revenue stream is based on the performance of the system only. The city's only obligation is to buy the energy the system produces at a set price. So they're highly incentivized to maintain the system to last as long as humanly possible. And they have an O&M contract with us to make sure that it is working as well as possible.
Thank you. The SOLED gets the benefit of the purchase of the energy from the panels and then tax credits on the other side. And that's the business model for SOLED.
Right, and the depreciation of the equipment as well.
Okay.
And they are giving, as part of the deal, they're giving the city the rights to the renewable energy certificates or credits.
Which would help mitigate the greenhouse gases, obviously.
Certainly.
The credits. Okay.
Certainly.
In the RFP that went out and the vetting of the various companies that are bidding on this process, what factors were considered other than financial and economic, rates, et cetera?
Certainly take that one. So I've got the list that I wrote down here that were included in the evaluation as evaluation criteria. Qualifications and expertise or experience, the technical proposal, which would include the components, the PV modules, inverters, as well as the proposed design, which affects how much energy can be produced. Of course, the project costs, as you mentioned, the implementation plan and schedule, as well as the contract terms and conditions and how, essentially how easy they would be to fit into the contracting process for cities such as Cotati.
I know that when we were looking at this concept, and it was initially brought prior to my being on the council, and then last May we went forward with the continuing to follow the process. I apologize, but I don't have a lot of information on SOLED. I think this was a lot of material that came at us in a relatively short period of time. But SOLED is a privately held firm?
That's correct.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And the model of your business structure is a union shop, a living wage corporation,
We very much think of it as being a sustainable company, and I don't mind sharing a couple of things that most people don't usually ask about. A year and a half ago, just a year and a half ago, that we formed the company, formed by two engineers who've done 70 megawatts of solar, primarily on schools, representing schools. Me, who's done 7 years of solar, about $270 million of projects for University of California, Arizona State University, Safeway stores, a variety of different parties. We came together because we wanted to do right by our public customers, and we formed a benefit corp. It is a for-profit company that lives by a mission. So there are not-for-profit public benefit organizations that only live by a mission and a board of directors. And there are for-profit companies that only live by shareholder value added. We are a for-profit company that lives by a mission and as much value within a sustainable range. We think of ourselves more as stewards than profiteers, and none of us wants to be working for a public company again. None of us wants to go IPO. None of us is in this for a fast exit. We're all in it for the long haul. We're very interested in that.
That's encouraging. If you're a year and a half old, then this will be one of the initial projects taken on by SOLED?
This 3.5 megawatts, it looks as though this 3.5 megawatts will get started before any of the other things that we are pursuing. That is correct. Okay. But as I say, we have completed financings and have some partners who are very interested in this portfolio of projects that is represented by the whole seed fund. Right now, there's kind of 3 different parties that are, one has given us, you got to give us an answer tomorrow, and there are various parties that would very much like to be a part of the financing of this. Primarily, I've got to say, not because of us, but because of you. because all of the agencies that are signing up are well-rated and have longevity and good sites.
I'm excited about the concept. I think it's a great idea. I think it's an opportunity to move forward and be progressive, but I also want to take into consideration the social consciousness of the whole project. I mean, so my concern is to support either a union concept or a living wage concept for the employees of the corporation, so that, you know.
And I think it's completely public knowledge that this prevailing wage construction in all of these instances, we're intending to remain a small shop ourselves. And if I could answer, David has suggested that I answer a question you didn't ask, but because you're too polite, and that is, well, okay, you're a new company. What if you go away? What if you file for bankruptcy? Well, we're doing something for you that it benefits each community and the financing, and that is we are putting the ownership into a single-member LLC that is bankruptcy remote and that is not going to be dragged down by anything that may happen to us. So it will live as something that will live with big money and with your service agreements coming into that, whether or not we are a part of it. Okay?
Thank you.
So it's a sort of a standard project finance, bankruptcy remote LLC that's freestanding.
That's encouraging. Remote, I'm a little concerned with. I don't know what that means. I mean, I've heard of LLCs becoming bankrupt, but...
And that is possible. Not in the case in which it would own all the assets and not have any other liabilities than what its financing partners are putting in, and they're motivated to keep the contracts going and to keep the equipment moving and working. It doesn't move, most of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harvey?
Yeah. Thank you for answering that question, because I was going to ask what happens if that happens. And I guess my other question is really for Councilmember Landman, and that's what, if any, is the impact to what we have with Sonoma Clean Power? Is this kind of thing already considered that might happen, or does this like pull the rug out from under it? Help me.
We're forced to quit Sonoma Clean Power, and it puts it out of business.
Oh.
No, I'm kidding. Actually, no impact whatsoever. Basically, this would, I believe what we're looking at would be an energy metering system, which is essentially a system that's designed to maximize the amount of power you're getting, but it's smaller than something that's designed to generate additional power. It's designed to give you enough power to satisfy your needs without putting you in the position of trying to generate extra. And with a big difference I think you'd see with us is basically we're a little more generous in terms of when we do report squaring up with you in terms of money coming back. We pay a slightly higher rate. We have to, because unfortunately with lower rates you generate less with us. So bottom line, it compares well. So I think it's either a wash or you do slightly better. So there's no problem that I can see from that perspective, and thank you for pointing that out.
I just wanted to be sure that we weren't, you know,
Always a
cutting
good
off our nose to spite our face.
Good thing to avoid.
That's it?
That's it.
All right, Vice Mayor Skillman.
Thank you. I definitely appreciate all of you coming tonight and answering all of our questions. And I especially appreciate you answering questions we weren't even answering or asking. And I think this is a great plan as far as limiting our liability, the fact that we were able to terminate the agreement on so many different levels if necessary. Not that we would want to, but it's, as an attorney, I always think worst case scenario. So it's nice that we have an out, and it's nice that we don't have a lot of upfront costs with the regular PPA that was recommended. And I also appreciate that we get to continue to own the renewable energy credits that'll help us as a city. So overall, I'm very much in support of this idea, and very happy that it coincided with a citizen coming and talking about solar energy. So thank you very much for coming.
All right, thank you. Just a couple of very brief comments. I pretty much echo what everybody else has said up here. certainly the PPA with prepayment is a horrible option. So I'm glad that you suggested we would not be looking at that, because I strongly would have been suggesting that. I have a question on page 3 of 7 of the staff report. And this is just because it's going to go into some kind of a permanent record, but the last sentence on that page says a lease arrangement was also priced but was discarded because it didn't not provide any benefit. I'm guessing that double negative really doesn't need to be there?
Yes.
You don't need to answer that.
That is correct. Thank you.
No problem. Did I point that out publicly? Possibly, but I'm just saying, for posterity's sake, it'd be nice to get rid of one of those. All right, thank you too much. I don't have any additional questions for you folks. I think this is definitely a forward-moving project. I'm glad that we're a part of this. It's a shame other cities in the county didn't jump in. It was us and Cloverdale. Those were the only two, I think, right, on the list?
Us and Cloverdale and, of course, the water agency.
There was a couple of county agencies, which is great. Yeah, it just seems like this is I hate to say something like this, but looks really good for us in so many ways. I think the finances, it looks great, the long term, what we're getting out of it, the benefits to the citizens in a sense. So, and I think we need to somehow really take advantage of some kind of an educational message and getting that out to the public, saying that, these kinds of systems maybe don't exist for residential, I get that, but, these systems exist. There's ways of getting them installed. There's incentives out there, and the more we can promote something like this, and you got to start by doing it in your own house, right? So here we are. So thank you for that. It's a great staff report, too, very thorough. Thank you guys for putting up with us for this time. Thank you who are still putting up with us, because we're not done with you yet over there. So at this point, I'm looking for some kind of direction in the form of a motion, if we have that.
I'd like to make a motion. Oops, did I turn this off? I did. Recommend that we adopt a resolution approving the form of a power purchase agreement and directing the city clerk to schedule a public hearing for the city council meeting on October 14, 2014, to consider authorizing the city manager to execute site-specific power purchase agreements with SolEd Benefit Corporation. How's that?
Good.
I'd second.
Did you want to read it again, or were you happy just the first time?
Thank you.
All right, good. So we have a motion and a second. Is there any further comment or questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Shows a 5-0 vote in favor. Thank you all very much for that. We will now be rotating these items. So we're going to be looking at agenda item number 10, and I believe that Vice Mayor Skillman has had it tonight and is too ill, and I would rather she moved further away from me. So we're going to excuse the Vice Mayor from the rest of this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for holding out for us. All right, so we are on item 10.
Vice Mayor Skillman's not going to karaoke, is she?
No.
Not to my knowledge.
We don't know that.
And so we're looking at adoption of resolution approving the fiscal year 14-15 budget. And we will turn all of our attention to David Spillman once he's organized. Thanks, Wendy.
Get better.
Would you folks in the audience care to move up to the front row? No? But that's, thank you so much. Really?
Uh-oh.
Oh, there's a PowerPoint. Sorry. I didn't know what you were doing.
He's going to pass out popcorn, too.
Yeah.
It's well after 8:30 yet.
All right, Mayor, members of the... Oh. Shall I wait until Councilmember Skillman returns?
No, she's gone for the evening. We excused her. Thanks for listening.
Okay, yeah.
But no, go ahead.
All right, then. So this is the As you know, the last meeting, we had a budget study session on the draft budget, and so we heard your comments and also went through it and made sure all the I's were dotted and T's were crossed, and we're here tonight. And so as, of course, you know, this is just a recap of the City Council goals that we went over in the last strategic planning meeting. And they are, of course, to ensure the long-term vitality of the city, provide core services consistent with standard community service levels, pursue opportunities to increase efficiencies of city operations and community engagement. And then these are just some highlights, some sort of top-level highlights of what this budget contains. And thanks to the voters of Cotati, passage of Measure G, which is obviously a significant help to our general fund. We'll be entering fiscal year 14-15 for the 5th year with a balanced budget, and we'll also be able to fully fund our general fund operating reserves. There's a significant investment in infrastructure contained within this budget, and there's some sample projects there. Close to $600,000 in roadway maintenance that will be starting shortly in the next month. About $1.9 million in improvements on Old Redwood Highway, pretty much from 116 all the way down to Page Street. And continued investment in the water and sewer infrastructure. And there's also key staffing additions to improve service, and those include a new police officer, a new public works maintenance worker, and 2 seasonal public works field aides. And these should all contribute to the level of service we provide to our citizens. And then I'll hand it off to Mr. Spillman to complete this presentation on the numbers.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, turn the wrong page here. This is a chart that summarizes some of the changes from the draft budget that was presented to you on September 9th. Staff went back where a budget document is a continually evolving thing. And we're still in the process of analyzing and closing out the last fiscal year. And so we've been able to identify about $280,000 of additional net cost savings from last fiscal year, as well as adjustments to revenues, accrued revenues and expenses. So that increased the fund balance that was available to us by about $208,000. In addition, we went through and we analyzed the transfers in between funds, and we've identified that we needed to increase. The negative numbers here are bad things, and the positive numbers are good things. We needed to increase the transfers from the general fund to the vehicle replacement fund for about $88,000, and then there was about another $7,000 of net minor adjustments. We were able to reduce the draft budget estimated expenditures in the police department, election. There was a double counting of some of the election costs. The leases that some of the equipment leases, I went back, analyzed those, and those have been paid off. So that was a miscoding on my part to extend those on out. And then again, there were some transfers for this fiscal year in between funds that netted out some changes. And so that basically reduced uses, expenditures, and other uses in the general fund by about $159,000. So that's a good thing. It was going in the right direction. Then we went through and looked at some other areas of the budget, and we needed to increase cost in these two areas in the budget. One was park maintenance. There was a miscoding of the salary and benefit allocations to the park maintenance department. That was about $50,000, 59, almost 60,000. Damien went through and looked at some of the capital improvement projects and received more updated estimates of some design service costs at about $34,000 for one of the capital improvement projects. And then we also added in legal cost of about $10,000 to review the general plan update. And then there were also some other miscellaneous ups and downs dealing with the election cost estimates that we had received from the county and other minor adjustments for an increase of about $133,000. And then as a separate line item, I could have combined these two together, but as a separate line item, we added to the budget about $75,000 to address the cost of the city manager recruitment, the administrative services director recruitment, and increasing our contract services for HR assistants for the number of vacant positions that we have. We have an extraordinary number of new and vacant, well, a low number of new positions, but an extraordinary number of vacant positions that would have had a burden on existing staff to effectively do the recruitment. The bottom line is that the net of all of those adjustments come out to an increase in the general fund ending balance of about $93,000. So again, with all the ups and downs and sideways, it all went in the right direction. The special revenue funds had no change, and the water fund, we had a reduction of about $151,000 in capital improvement contract services. Damien again went back through, took a close look at some of those capital improvement projects and was able to refine those numbers a little bit. And then in the sewer fund, there was a minor adjustment of about $1,000 to one of the capital projects. So those are essentially the major differences in the budget. Yeah, there we go. There was a question last time about the staffing details and the allocations. You'll notice that in the budget document, each one of the departments identifies staffing levels that are allocated to that department. This is a summary of all of the departments, and these are all position allocations for all funds and relating to the 4 additional FTEs to the allocation. This is the fiscal year, the current fiscal year 14-15 allocation of the 40.75 FTEs to the various funds. The general fund takes about 31 positions are allocated, or about 77% of our total staffing. And then the water fund has about 11%, sewer fund about 8%, and then there's about 4% of the staff that's still allocated to the administration of the successor agency. And you'll recognize this chart from the last presentation showing graphically where all of the positions are located. The expenditures by fund for all positions or for all funds, is projected at about $18.8 million. That's down $100,000 from what was shown to you on the 9th. No big changes in here. The allocations are about the same as what you looked at before. Expenditures by type, again, you'll see the changes in operations. This has gone down slightly. The numbers are large enough that the percentages haven't really changed from the prior year, but this gives you the magnitude of your budget. Revenues by source, we didn't change any of the revenue estimates. Didn't need to. Same as what we had estimated or presented to you last time at about $15.7 million. Capital improvements, as Damien indicated, there's a significant investment in capital improvements. That was adjusted slightly by about $100,000 down. And this shows again where the capital improvements are located. I think Damien wants to say some more things about that. No? Okay. And that's our formal presentation. We thought we would save you from going through each one of the slides again.
Before we close, I did want to add too that the resolution, the attached resolution, is proposing to rescind the fiscal emergency that was adopted by the council earlier in the year with the adoption, concurrent with the adoption of this budget. And also, I just wanted to remind everyone that at the last budget study session, we had a discussion regarding funding of the Cotati Chamber of Commerce. And if the council desires to move forward on funding the Chamber of Commerce, in the city council budget, there's a contributions account. There's currently nothing shown there, but there's an opportunity to amend it concurrent with adoption if that's the direction that you so choose.
And I assume that's the end of the presentation then. Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions for staff at this point from anyone?
I just have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say that now, but it depends on what the answer is. 88,000 increase in vehicle fund? Is that what I heard? $88,000 increase in the vehicle fund? Right. What are we buying?
I'm sorry.
We've got an $88,000 increase in the vehicle fund, right?
Right.
Okay, what are we buying for $88,000? A couple of Hummers or something?
Sorry, where are you? What page are you on?
I was just looking at the presentation from David and talking about the increase in the vehicle funds, vehicle replacement funds. We found $208,000 and we're spending $115,000.
If you'll look on page 9 of the budget document, top of page 9, the vehicle replacement fund, we're basically buying or projected to buy this fiscal year 2 public works vehicles and 2 police patrol car and an unmarked police vehicle. And the $88,000 transfer from the general fund was not a transfer that was identified for any particular vehicle. One of the, and I think Damien had discussed this the last time, that we're trying to establish or reestablish the vehicle replacement fund to be funded by the individual funds, water, general fund, water, sewer, and any other funds that can contribute to it, to start to build up a fund to replace our vehicles on a more stabilized and more consistent basis than has been done in the past.
I think it's important for the council as they review the budget for this year to keep in mind that for several years we've been limping along trying to keep our cost as low as possible because of the city's financial uncertainty. And now with Measure G passing and financial stability established, there's a pent-up need to replace equipment and vehicles and fill vacant positions and so forth. So that's what you're seeing in terms of expenditures in this budget.
But didn't we have, or am I imagining this, there was a vehicle replacement, I don't know, what do you want to call it, plan, and aren't these items part of that plan? I think one of my questions during all of this was, did we have a plan and are we on track with this plan, and is this the monies that we're seeing in here based upon that plan?
Yeah, we do have a plan, and
Okay, I didn't imagine that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, no, it's it's essentially the same plan that that the council saw earlier, just updated, and in this budget we're taking a purchase approach. Before it was a leasing approach because we were so strapped for money at the time. It's a slightly different approach. So but the plan is the same in terms of the schedule for replacement of vehicles.
So we're on, what I understood was we're on track, and this is really just us executing that plan that...
Right. This is just the next year of that plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So in changing the plan from a lease that seemed to be more, less expensive, I should say, to a purchase, I'm assuming that the purchase with the depreciation is equal to the lease and just requires greater capital outlay?
Well, the lease approach was proposed at the time primarily because it allowed us to spread the costs out over years when we didn't have any funding to actually purchase it. But any lease or any type of financing does come with some some interest, and for so a small, relatively small purchase like this, if the funding is available, it makes sense to buy it and not carry the lease.
Okay, I'm confused. I know it's not a huge amount of money, but if it was economically made more sense to do a lease before, or are you saying it didn't, it was only because we were strapped for cash?
That's correct. We opted for the lease because we didn't have sufficient financial resources to make the purchase. At this point, we do have the resources to make the purchase, and it's financially advantageous to do so. The other reason a lease is a good idea is when you think you're going to change your mind about owning the vehicle. In our situation, when we buy a police vehicle and we outfit it the way you have to with police vehicles, it's unlikely that the chief is going to change his mind and say, we're going to go with Priuses instead of the Crown Victoria or whatever the vehicle is. So once we buy a vehicle in the public sector, we pretty much know we're going to keep that vehicle, and we invest in it with putting equipment in it and so forth. So it does make sense to purchase vehicles if you can afford to do so.
Councilmember Moore, I think you just opened the door to Priuses for the police department in Cotati.
Well, we used to have Mazdas. I didn't know that the K-9 vehicle was in need of replacement. That seemed like a relatively newer vehicle. No?
We consider it a patrol vehicle, but it's high mileage. It's over 100,000. But that's not the specific plan. Just any marked patrol, any marked patrol vehicle can be replaced. So are you seeing somewhere where it says specifically the K-9 unit?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, it has 106,000 miles on it.
That's nothing. Yeah. And then another unmarked car.
The unmarked car, we have a current unmarked car. It has 130,000 miles on it.
So that's replacement. That's what this says, replacement, not another unmarked car.
Yeah, it's not on the...
Right?
It does say replacement.
It does say replacement, yes.
I'll add to the vehicle replacement.
It would be in there. Oh, no, that's for...
I see it right here.
That's for...
The vehicle replacement program has, there's a threshold of miles or years, and for police vehicles, because of, well, I mean, there's a lot of hard use put on police vehicles, and I don't think I've ever seen a police vehicle anywhere go over 100,000 miles as a best practice. And they also have generally like a 7-year service life and or 100,000 miles.
That's just in general, law enforcement. I mean, that's the same thing out at where I work.
Well, I understand that.
And I just want to say they're not as responsible as all of the other departments in taking care of their vehicles, and so they always have to continually replace them. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying when I'm speaking my mind here.
And if I can add one more thing. So they're pursuit-rated vehicles, so you don't want to be in a pursuit in a car that has over 100,000 miles and starting to have mechanical issues.
The Prius has a lot of pick up and go. But go on. Councilmember Moore, you still have some more questions?
No, that was it for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilmember Harvey?
I just want to follow up on that since we're on this page.
Yeah.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the way the leases were that we had, that it wasn't like you turned in the vehicle at the end. I thought we had leases where we ended up okay.
That's
that
correct.
was a little confusing, the way your example that you gave sounded like we were going to change our mind and give it back, and I didn't think those were the kind of leases we had.
No, but that's generally the benefit of a lease.
Generally, yeah, but that wasn't what we got. True. Okay. All right. That's sort of what I wanted to know. Okay. So, is it my turn?
No, we're going to actually go to Councilmember Landman, and then
That's
I'll
fine.
come back to you later because
That's fine.
you have a big list.
I'm a what?
No, I said you have a big list. Go on. Yeah.
And I don't know when the kidding starts and stops. This is not a good sign. But I will say in general, I think Councilmember Harvey's comment was spot on in pointing out the value of that vehicle replacement fund. And having seen this start a few years ago, I'm very happy to see this coming. I mean, the real idea of this, and I have the advantage, like the mayor, having worked in a place where we had a stable of vehicles, and we saw over the years, and if you think about it, just as a property owner with your own vehicles, what happens when you have a couple of cars? You hate to spend the money to get a new one. They sit there for a while, and all of a sudden they usually both break down at the same time at Christmas. That's how it always worked for the Landman family. And it's the same thing at a larger level for a city. You want to avoid a sudden financial crisis due to either having sudden rash of vehicle problems that are very expensive, and often this is bad money being put in to do repairs that are to a vehicle that probably really doesn't have the value to warrant that, or even worse, having sudden rash of vehicles just not available, obsolescence, or certainly the vision of being on pursuit and having the transmission fall out. That would be a lovely community voice headline, so I would hate to see that too. So I think the smoothing, the financial smoothing of this is a good thing, and I think there's a good question to point that out, and I'm going to give staff credit for bringing this forward the last couple of years. And I think we're going to really start seeing the advantage of this now in terms of cost savings and better use of the fleet. This is going to be a lot better in terms of determining budget. So. Quick bottom line, really comfortable with the focus in this budget on the police, public works, and particularly the infrastructure improvement, particularly the neighborhood roads. I mean, we've talked about this. This is a big thing. We haven't got back there in a half a decade almost, it seems like, and this is really good. So I'm very supportive of that. One area I'll just talk very briefly that I would like to see perhaps a slightly higher appropriation for would be in our maintenance assessment districts. We have a few of these around town, and we've discussed the problem. Many of them were done so many years ago that they have no escalator built in. They don't have rolling costs built into them. So whatever amount was set to maintain these things may have been fine 20 years ago, but now not only is it not even to maintain basic maintenance, but they've dropped farther and farther. And it's interesting, I'm finding, walking around, this is on the minds of a lot of people in a lot of different neighborhoods and different disparate areas. They're all concerned about that. And, you know, looking at it, actually being on foot instead of just driving by quickly, they have a very valid point. I recognize the problem we have putting money into these, but these really reflect how the community looks. I mean, making that look better would be a huge investment in the value of the community. And as you walk the neighborhoods, as you look at the work staff and planning has done over the years, we really have some nice neighborhoods in Cotati. When you start going back in many of the little streets and the many bigger and smaller subdivisions and stuff, they're beautiful, and the only thing that's kind of a shame is some of these areas. So I know this is something that, as an ongoing cost, we can't bear, and I know it's something we need to revisit someday in terms to get to something that's a rolling cost. But I'd like to propose that as a one-time improvement to getting some of these back up to looking better, particularly like along Myrtle, an area, probably you know how that looks if you really look at it. If we make these areas look nice, we buy some time, and we're also in a better position, I think, to talk to people if the point in time comes where they have to assess, what do I really want to pay to maintain the look of my neighborhood? I think you're in a better position if you've offered them something of value and show what it could be, instead of going and asking that question when things are in poor repair. So I'm going to give credit. I noticed looking on page 61, this has been increased somewhat, and I would just kick back to staff. There's a way to do a little more there in terms of not an ongoing cost, but a one-time benefit assessment to basically get back to square one of these, make them look nice. Some more modern plantings, perhaps, that need less water, less maintenance, but which will look nice in a couple of years, be a big benefit. So that's the only thing I have. I appreciate everything that's been brought forward tonight. Good budget.
All right, Councilmember Harvey.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank staff. I had a lot more questions, and I appreciate those questions being answered, in particular the details around the personnel costs and the allocations, because it was important for us to understand whether or not this was a budget that we could really afford or not. So I appreciate that detail. I'm really excited that we actually are doing capital improvements. It's been like a really long time, and so the fact that we're putting in over $6 million to improve things, I think, is really important. I'm glad to see that the budget changed from last time to being sort of a deficit to being a surplus. Now, one of the things that I want people to make sure that they kind of get around this is that those numbers, especially for the personnel costs, because we're kind of doing this sort of mid-year, we're not really at the beginning. Some of those are either three-quarter people or half people, depending upon when we think we'll replace them. So those positions really aren't what we will fully see when we see a full year. So in other words, we had about $225,000 in increases for the number of staff we had, which is great for 4 people, but when we see a full year's worth, there'll be another couple $100,000 kind of to have a full year of those people. On the flip side of that, we only have a portion of Measure G. So I've been sort of assured, because my concern was, are these increases that we made, are they sustainable? Can we sustain this? And I've been sort of assured that kind of the Measure G stuff, when it comes, can support the staffing levels. And that was really, my biggest concern is I don't want to be in a position where we've added these staff and then uh-oh, we don't have the revenues and we have to, let staff go again. That is not anything that I want to be. So I'm glad to see that the projections are there that those will be sustainable. One of the things that sort of changed from when we had our study sessions to getting our budget is when we did our study sessions, we didn't really have per se an economic development department. We now have one, which is great, because I know that that's important to the council that economic development be our focus. What I would like to see is goals for that. Because we didn't really talk about it then, we had goals for the rest of the departments, and so since we're spending money there, I would like to see, us, and they're probably being pulled from other departments because that stuff was spread out, but I think that they warrant having their own set of goals there. And then I guess, lastly, I'm hoping that we will talk about the chamber funding, but I do really appreciate the effort that was put into this and the answering of the questions, because it makes me feel much more comfortable with where we're at.
All right, thank you for that. Thank you very much. Yeah, and I too, the first thing I wrote down was certainly having a discussion. I know we had a brief discussion at our last meeting regarding the chamber, and I'll open it for public comment and see if there's anyone out there who may want to comment on that or anything else. I also am wondering about putting out a press release and really highlighting that, you know, with the passage of Measure G, here's the budget that's been passed by the council. Here's, you know, what's in that budget. It includes an extra police officer. It includes, you know, extra maintenance workers. And I think the paving project is a big deal. And those were really, to me, those were sort of the three most key points that were made when we were talking about Measure G. And here we are. It's coming to fruition, which I think is really, really important to get that message out there. So I don't know if you guys were planning on doing one tomorrow or the next week or something, but I just kind of wanted to throw that in the mix. Happy to help out however I can help on that. So maybe we can just chat real briefly after the meeting or something. But I think if the council's in agreement, I think it'd be a good thing to put out that press release, you know, 5th year running of a balanced budget and so on and so forth. But really, really emphasizing, you know, the fact that Measure G passed, here's what it means for this coming year. And I think it's a big deal, and I think we should tout that myself, because there is a significant investment in infrastructure that is happening. I have a very specific question on page 7 of the budget. I don't think I'm going to be a hero. I don't think I found $25,000. However, when I look at Water Capital Fund 13, and I go to this fiscal year's column for proposed 14-15, there's, in the total, it says $25,000, but I don't see any numbers up there. And if that's a really cool Excel formula, David, that you came up with to make money appear, I want to know about it. I want to in on this one. All ears.
It's the magic of spreadsheets.
I see.
And at times, I'm sure that people think that I intentionally put errors in here just to see if they're actually reading.
That's right. That's just what I'm thinking.
And that's interesting that you saw that, because that's on my note.
Ah, good. Excellent.
What happened is that there's an allocation of $25,000 to the SCADA project, very similar to down below under the Sewer Operations Fund, Sewer SCADA system upgrade. Up in the water, we've got $25,000 there. The problem was that when I was consolidating and all that, that row got hidden. So there is a $25,000 row in here that corresponds to that total.
That's a way cool way of doing that. Thank you for cluing me in on that. When I do the budgets out at work now, I think I'll be clued in a little bit more. But again, just making sure that we are on top of our game and reading everything in the agenda. I appreciate that. So, yeah, I too am very pleased. Like I say, I'm pleased to the point where I think, you know, we need to really tout what we said we were going to do with the Measure G funds, and here we are on page 1 of Measure G. We're doing that before we even see those dollars roll in. So I think at that point, I think we're all good with our comments for now. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing and see if anyone has any comments regarding the budget. If I don't see anybody get up, if you're going to argue amongst yourselves of who's going to stand up, I will close the public hearing. Ah, there we go. I know I'd motivate you one way or the other.
You all know how much I love doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've done quite a bit of research. Hello, everybody. Thanks for all the great work on the budget. I've done a lot of research since our last meeting. Sorry, my cold is messing with me. And what I've learned is, I'm speaking on behalf of the Cotati Chamber of Commerce, what I really learned is if you've seen one chamber, you've seen one chamber. Every chamber of commerce in this country is different. What I was while researching what cities do for their chambers, I was really encouraged, and I actually laughed at some of the stuff that I found, because every city is going through the exact same question. The city council for Manhattan is facing the exact same scenario as the Cotati City Council. It's really interesting. What chambers do to make money, very much the same, large and small. The only real difference is How much money can a chamber pull in from the businesses in the community? How many businesses are in that community to give the chamber its, keep the chamber going? In our case, we are a small town, 7,500 people or so. We have about 140 businesses in the chamber. We don't have a lot of land mass for stretching out and attaining more businesses. So we are caught in a place where we're constantly, the revenue that we pull in from the businesses for their memberships is not enough to get us over to the top of doing more for the community. So we end up having to fundraise to make money. So this is one administrative coordinator, all volunteer board, fundraising to make money to do good things for the town that they work in. What ends up happening is that the volunteers end up burning out because, people raise money. If you're raising money for, kids, going to school, or kids' shoes, or kids are hungry, that's good stuff. But if you're raising money, simply raising money to do good things for your city, that's a tougher thing. It's kind of a, and so after you've done it for a while, and by the way, I've been doing it for 14 years now, it gets to be, you're kind of spinning your wheels. So in this case, in the case of Cotati, the City of Cotati and the Cotati Chamber of Commerce, we need a little bit of help. And we don't need help because we are in the red. We need the help because we want to do more things for the city. We want to provide more of a presence for when people come in and have questions, and having a staff, being able to pay a staff person to answer those questions for the city, for tourism, for all the things that we provide the town. Remember, a lot of the things that we do for the town are things that you asked our help with. And I can't remember you're ever asking our help with something and us saying no. I think that every time that you've come to us to ask us our help with anything, we've always said yes. I'm talking about Kids Day. And not only yes, but building Kids Day to even a better thing, and being proud of that. And Jazz Festival, for 14 years, the city came to us and asked us, hey, can you help us with Jazz Festival because it's tanking? And we said yes, and we built it to something that's, we continued the process. So we're not asking for anything because of that. What we're saying is, if we have a little bit of help, we can do an even better job for the town, providing positive events and positive aspects, things for our businesses, and that's why we're asking for the money.
All right.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. And just on the level of full disclosure, at our last council meeting, I had mentioned that, that I would meet because I clearly needed more clarification on the draft proposal that had been submitted by the chamber to us, and there were some things in there that just weren't clear to me and I didn't understand. And I met with Andre and Jamie, I think the following Friday, if I'm not mistaken. We did it pretty quickly, and we read through this again. I expressed my concerns, and I walked away feeling very comfortable, and I think we had a clear understanding of what their needs are, how we could help the chamber, and indeed how that just turns around and how the chamber really ends up helping the city as well and helping the businesses. So again, we're still open for public comment if anyone else has no. I'm seeing no's. So I will close the public comment period and bring this back to council. Again, we're looking to adopt and approve our FY14-15 budget, but I believe that we're allowed to certainly add this as a line item, whatever dollar figure we want to bring up in that appropriate section of the City Council budget, and then approve the budget at that point in time. This will be a part of that. So it's open for discussion at this point in time. Whoever cares to start. Okay, Councilmember Landman.
Well, first of all, it would be, I'm glad you were able to have that meeting. I'm sure that probably gave a better direction. I'm not really privy to what went on there, but I can say this is something I put a lot of thought into because obviously I have a lot of people involved for a long time that I care very deeply about on all sides of this. But those are the type of things that make it really difficult to step back as a council member and put on that council member hat and look at it. So I did what I usually do when it's something like that and just went out to people in the community and asked their thoughts. And I think the number one thing I heard is that everybody said they would not like to see a headline that said that the city would not support its chamber, and I tended to agree with them on that. That was a bottom line from everybody. And I'm talking local businesses, some of which are not really typically involved deeply with the chamber, some of which are more, and some of the people you might know in the community have been around a long time and are deeply involved now or in the past with Cotati. They suggested that a commonality I heard from almost everybody was there was strong support for the idea of a real strength for the chamber, local business support, local business communication, the things that actually, as Andre said, they're already doing. For example, the wine and cheese stakeholder meetings, the luncheons, and the list is rather long, and I shouldn't have probably written it all down so I could remember it all, but these type of ongoing things serve a critical function in keeping businesses going. So I think there's support for that. There was a suggestion that perhaps the amount was negotiable and it should be lower. Remember, this is Cotati, and most people are very tight with a dollar, so I wasn't surprised to hear that either. But that's the feedback I had, and I'm supportive of that. I like this idea. I think there's value certainly in that. Economic development strikes me as a separate issue, but just in the basis of the value the chamber brings in working with local business as well as working in the events, and that's a two-sided thing. There's also fundraising that enables there, so it's good for both of us. I think there's value in that. I'd like to see it continue. In terms of a price, I think 18K struck me as a little high maybe, and we might want to have some discussion on that. It'd be interesting to see where you're at in that. But those are my thoughts, and in general, I think it's not a bad idea.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Harvey.
Well, I'm glad that you're out there pounding the pavement right now because that way you can get, some local feedback. That's the one good thing about it being an election year.
You almost can't avoid it.
Well, you can have that, direct conversation, so that's good. I think there's no doubt that the chamber does really wonderful things for the community, and like many of you on the council, we've all volunteered, and you can't do everything just by volunteers. It just, it's not going to work. As Andre pointed out, people get burned out, and I've seen, instances where it's the same people over and over and over again, and you want to sign up for 2 hours, well, you end up being there for 10 hours because there wasn't anybody else to tap on the shoulder. So as far as, the office being open, I think that it is important. I don't think we want to see a headline where, yeah, there's a chamber, but their doors are closed. I don't think that sends a good message to anybody wanting to come to our community to set up a business. They're going to expect to be able to go in and communicate with those folks. So I certainly am supportive.
Whatever time that is, I have to put my glasses on. My goodness, is it really 10:40? Yes, it is.